Thank you, and thank you for coming here today from Canada.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the organizers of this conference. It's a great honor for me to be here in Washington, and thank you for inviting me here. In 2002, when I was 11 years old, my mother, who is the people's artist of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, was invited to Moscow for an interview. She took me with her. When we arrived, the Russian journalist met us, and she looked at me and said to my mom, "Don't take the subway with your daughter." My mother was very surprised. She said, "Why?" And the journalist replied, "You're blonde, you look like Russian, but your daughter has the features of a person of Caucasian nationality. You might have problems with local militia. It means лицо кавказской национальности." And my mother was shocked. Years later, when I started to reflect upon the incident and the reaction of this journalist, I understood that her reaction was caused by the phenomenon of Caucasophobia present among ethnic Russians and spread by Putin's policy of demonizing the Chechens. So I find it's important to understand the roots of the Chechen and Russian conflict. Historically, the relationship between Chechens and Russians has been characterized by the Russian willingness to use the overwhelming might to suppress the Chechens' will for self-determination. In fact, during the Great Caucasian War, the Chechens were represented by the image of a wicked Chechen who weds his dagger kin, as it is written by one of the greatest Russian poets, Lermontov, in his famous Cossack lullaby. During Soviet times, Stalin accused the entire nation for alleged support for Nazi invaders and deported all the population to Kazakhstan in Siberia, and labeled the Chechen people as enemy of the state, although it is a historic fact that Nazis, Germans, never reached Chechnya. So 50% of the population perished en route to Kazakhstan. In 1994, when Yeltsin launched a full-scale air and land attack on Chechnya, Yeltsin labeled the Chechen resistance, bandits, the regime as criminal, and the head of Chechen government, Johar Dudayev, as mad. Later, Putin portrayed Chechens as uniquely a criminal nation and Islamic terrorists. In fact, upon coming to power, he right away struck a chord with the Russian public by promising to waste all the terrorists in the outhouse. So the Chechen people are victims of Russian propaganda and are being used as a scarecrow to scare everyone away from the Chechen state. And the truth is that Russian imperialists, including Russian liberals, until this very moment support this narrative and deny the existence of the Chechen independent state. It is a fact that the Chechen independent state is a legitimate state as was USSR. The Declaration of State Sovereignty, adopted on 27 November 1990, was in full conformity with the USSR legislation. It is also a fact that in May 1992, the government of Johar Dudayev signed an agreement on the apportioning of weapons and military equipment with the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, Pavel Grachev. If Johar Dudayev had really come to power after an armed rebellion, as it is claimed by all the Russian imperialists, including liberals, there would have been absolutely no question of transferring arms and military equipment to the government he headed. After the defeat in the First Russo-Chechen War, Russia recognized the sovereignty of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, de jure and de facto, concluding a peace treaty with Chechnya in May 1997, where both states were designated as subjects of the international law. Russian imperialists refused to admit that Russia committed war crimes in Chechnya. There is a lot of documented evidence about the fact that Russia's tactics in Chechnya were not in keeping with the Geneva Convention and its commitments to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Vacuum bombs, deliberate attacks on civilian populations, ethnic cleansing, torture, sweeps, everything has been used in Chechnya, which resulted in the death of 300,000 Chechen civilians, including my father, 42,000 children, and the death of democracy in Russia. In fact, Putin's rule has been synonymous with eradication of political opponents, anti-democratic reforms, suppression of free press and the demonization of Chechen people. Putin turned Russia into a unitary state and established a autocracy with the Russian chauvinist imperialist ideology at the heart of his rule, which transformed into a form of fascism. One Führer, one Russia, and for Russians only. And this chauvinist imperialist ideology, until this very moment, is deeply admired by all Russian so-called liberals. By adopting the policy of appeasement, by tolerating Putin's narrative, and accepting the black hole of lawlessness on the Russian side in Chechnya, the world, the West, has unfortunately raised a monster which is today threatening the entire world with a nuclear weapon. So what's next? How do we deal with this crisis in Eastern Europe? The West must realize that to achieve a long-term, substantial peace in the region, it can't just sweep Chechnya under the carpet as it has done for the past 30 years. Yes, the Soviet Union collapsed, but the evil empire did not fall apart precisely because the West convinced Ukraine to sign the 1994 memorandum and did not recognize the independence declared by Chechnya and Tatarstan. It's time for the West, and in fact, the West gonna commit the same mistake if it continues to listen to the Russian liberals who want to save the great Russian Empire. It's time for the West to change its policy towards the occupied Chechen Republic of Ichkeria and Caucasus. It's time to follow the example of Ukraine and recognize the sovereignty of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria as Ukraine has done it on 18th October 2022. The Chechen government in exile is closely working with Ukrainian authorities and is willing to cooperate with the United States of America and the European Union. We need diplomatic and political support and financial support. Our capacities are very limited because we lack funds. We can't mobilize all our forces because we don't have financial means for that. I can assure you that the moment we receive support from the West, it won't find any better ally than the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. Even Tolstoy said that Chechens are true friends and worst enemies. And we stand with United States of America, we stand with Ukraine. We value freedom as much as Americans do because we have been fighting for it desperately since 18th century. And I find it's amazing that today I can sit here in Washington and represent my country without being afraid that I will be killed or kidnapped as it happens in Russia when anyone dares to speak about the independent Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. The United States of America values freedom and democracy, and that is why we're looking forward to US cooperation. And finally, let's not forget that the defeat of Ukraine will be a disaster for the entire civilized world. It will be indeed the end of history, but not in Fukuyama's way. It will be the end of history where Goliath defeated David. The first president of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, Johar Dudayev, warned the entire world about the disastrous consequences that the Russian Empire would bring if not stopped in Chechnya. Today we can see that Russian Federation is igniting the sparks of terror all around the globe. And that's exactly what Johar Dudayev said. 30 years ago, the United States of America abandoned Chechnya. And the only wish I have today, now, may this never, never happen again. Thank you so much.